Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're setting our sights on Afghanistan, a place often called the Roundabout of the ancient world. And, well, that title is really earned, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's this incredible crossroads where empires, cultures, ideas, they've all met, clashed, and blended for literally millennia.
Yeah, a real focal point for so much of human history.
Mm.
A place of huge strategic importance, massive trade routes.
Exactly. And you feel that history is just baked into the land itself, and you certainly see it in the resilience of its people.
So our goal here today is to sift through a whole lot of information, a really rich collection of sources, and pull out the most crucial bits about Afghanistan's long history and where things stand now.
Right. We want to give you a shortcut, really, to being well-informed, get past the usual headlines, maybe uncover some surprising facts, some key insights.
We'll journey from ancient civilizations through these powerful empires, the more recent conflicts, looking at the challenges, but also, those unexpected signs of hope and endurance.
And hopefully by the end, you'll have a much clearer picture of what makes Afghanistan so complex, so fascinating, and yeah, often quite misunderstood. So, where should we begin?
Let's start right at the beginning with the name Afghanistan. It means land of the Afghans, or historically, land of the Pashtuns. But the story is deeper than that.
It is. Some scholars think the root Afghan might even link back to the Sanskrit Ashokan. That means horsemen or cavalrymen.
Horsemen, right? A name for the ancient people living up in the Hindu Kush Mountains.
Yeah. And the name Afan, in its Arabic or Persian form, pops up in a 10th century text, the Hudud al-Alam. But here's the thing, Afghanistan, as the name of the actual state, that only really solidified in the 19th century.
Ah, so quite late, coinciding with all that colonial jostling.
Precisely. So the name itself carries both this ancient echo and this overlay of modern geopolitics. It's quite something.
And speaking of ancient, the archaeology is just incredible. Human presence going back, 52,000 years?
At least. Places like Dara Kur, the Karakamar Caves. They show people were there a long time ago. And we see early farming villages appearing around 7,000 years ago. It really underlines Afghanistan's role as, a cradle of civilization.
So as we move forward chronologically, this crossroads idea becomes really clear. Empire after empire leaves its mark. First up, the Achaemenids.
Right. The Persian Achaemenid Empire, 6th century BCE, they brought regions like Arachosia, Arya, Bactria into their fold. Darius I conquered the Kabul Valley.
And Arachosia, around modern Kandahar, that was a major center for Zoroastrianism, wasn't it?
A huge center. Some even called it the religion's second homeland. Really significant.
Then Alexander the Great marches in, 330 BCE, after beating Darius III.
His time there was relatively short, but hugely impactful. He married Roxana, who was from Bactria, founded cities Alexandria, Arachosia, which is now Kandahar.
And wasn't it Alexander who supposedly said Afghanistan was easy to march into, but difficult to march out of?
That's the quote attributed to him, yes. And wow, has that proven prophetic over the centuries? It feels like a warning carved into the landscape itself.
It really does, a recurring theme. Okay, so after Alexander, we get the Maurya Empire controlling the area south of the Hindu Kush.
Until about 185 BCE, and this is when Buddhism really starts to spread significantly under Emperor Ashoka. They actually found his edicts, his inscriptions, right there in Afghanistan.
Which shows just how integrated the region was becoming. Even then, different rulers, different faiths flowing through.
Absolutely. And after the Mauryans, it gets even more complex. You have this succession of Hellenistic and post-Hellenistic powers. The Greco-Bactrians first.
Known for their sophisticated cities, like Ai-Khanoum.
Exactly, very Hellenistic in style. Then you get the Indo-Greeks, the Indo-Scythians, the Indo-Parthians, each leaving their own cultural layer. It's becoming this real mosaic.
And then comes a really major player, the Kushan Empire, around the 1st century CE. They seem to put Afghanistan right at the center of their world.
They really did. It wasn't just a military crossroads anymore. It was this vibrant hub. The Kushans were huge patrons of Buddhist culture. Buddhism absolutely flourished, often blending with Greek artistic styles, which is fascinating.
And their position on the Silk Road was just critical, wasn't it?
Oh, completely central. You had Chinese silk going west, Roman gold coming east, Persian silver, local gems like lapis lazuli, all passing through Afghanistan. Imagine the mix of cultures, the economic energy. It profoundly shaped the place.
So after the Kushans, does things settle down?
Not really, no. It remains contested territory. You get a whole sequence of powers. The Sassanids from Persia, the Kittites, the Hephthalites, various Turkic groups like the Turk Shahi, then the Hindu Shahi.
Wow, a rapid succession.
Yeah, each holding sway for a time before the next wave, eventually leading up to the Safarid conquest in 870 CE. This constant churn, this ebb and flow of power is just fundamental to understanding Afghanistan.
Okay, so we've seen these ancient foundations. Let's shift focus now to the medieval period, which really starts to forge the path towards, well, modern Afghanistan. And you can't really discuss this era without talking about the Mongols.
No, the Mongol invasion under Genghis Khan in 1219. It was utterly catastrophic.
Just devastating, right? Cities like Herat, Balkh, Bamiyan, basically wiped out.
Annihilated. Bamiyan got that horrifying nickname, the City of Screams, because the massacre was so complete, it forced society backward in many ways, back towards basic agriculture. And the damage to sophisticated irrigation systems took centuries to overcome, if ever.
But out of that devastation eventually comes resilience. The Timurid Empire, founded by Timur, or Tamerlane, in 1370.
Yes, and under his successors, particularly Shah Rukh, Herat becomes this incredible center of rebirth. The Timurid Renaissance.
People compare its artistic and intellectual flourishing to Renaissance Florence, don't they?
They do. An amazing recovery and period of cultural brilliance centered right there in Herat.
But even after Timur, Afghanistan didn't just become one unified thing, did it? It remained contested.
Very much so. Through the 16th and 17th centuries, it's basically carved up. You've got the Uzbeks in the north, the Safavids of Persia controlling the west, and the Mughal Empire based in India holding the east.
And Kandahar is often caught in the middle.
Kandahar is the key prize, the buffer zone, constantly changing hands between the Safavids and Mughals, a real point of contention.
But amidst all this fragmentation and foreign rule, you start to see a local power assert itself again. The Hotak dynasty.
Exactly. Early 18th century, the Safavid power is waning. Mirwais Hotak, a Pashtun leader, leads a successful revolt in Kandahar in 1709. He establishes his own kingdom.
That's a bold move.
And his son, Mahmud Hotak, takes it even further. He marches on Persia, captures the capital, Isfahan, in 1722, and even briefly declares himself Shah of Persia.
Wow. That's audacious.
Extremely. It didn't last long. Nader Shah eventually pushed them out, but it showed the rising ambition and capability of Afghan leadership.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the Durrani Empire, starting in 1747. This is often seen as the real foundation of modern Afghanistan.
Absolutely. After Nader Shah is assassinated, one of his commanders, Ahmad Khan Abdali, who becomes Ahmad Shah Durrani, is chosen as leader. He's widely revered as the Baba-i-Millat, the father of the nation.
And he built a huge empire, didn't he?
Immense. He unified what's roughly modern Afghanistan, but also large parts of Pakistan, bits of Iran, even controlled Delhi for a time in India. His victory over the Maratha Confederacy in 1761 was a massive military achievement, really cementing his power.
So the Durranis established this large state. But then, moving into the 19th century, things get complicated again.
The empire starts to fracture after Ahmad Shah, but then another key figure emerges, Dost Muhammad Khan from the Barakzai clan. He manages to reunify most of the core Afghan territories between 1823 and 1863.
And he's sometimes called the founder of the first modern Afghan state.
Yes, because he consolidated power in Kabul and established a more centralized administration, albeit after much internal strife.
And this is also when the Great Game kicks off in earnest.
Precisely. The intense rivalry between the expanding British Empire in India and the Russian Empire pushing south to Central Asia. Afghanistan finds itself once again as the crucial buffer state right in between these two giants.
Which inevitably leads to conflict on Afghan soil. The Anglo-Afghan Wars.
Yes. The first, 1839 to 1842. The British try to install a puppet ruler, Shah Shuja. It ends in absolute disaster for them, the infamous retreat from Kabul where almost the entire force was wiped out. Dost Muhammad Khan actually ends up back in power.
That warning from Alexander echoes again.
Loud and clear. Then there's the Second Anglo-Afghan War, 1878 to 1880. This time, the British are more successful militarily.
But they don't annex it directly.
No. They install a new emir, Abdur Rahman Khan, the Iron Emir. He's allowed internal autonomy, but Britain controls Afghanistan's foreign policy. And crucially, this war leads to the formal drawing of Afghanistan's modern borders, including the controversial Durand Line with British India.
So the 19th century ends with Afghanistan as a defined state, but under significant British influence. What happens in the 20th century?
Well, the quest for true independence and modernization really takes center stage. Emir Amanullah Khan, Abdurrahman's grandson, comes to power, and after the short Third Anglo-Afghan War in 1919, he declares full independence.
And he was a real modernizer, wasn't he? Quite radical for the time.
Very much so. He pushed for things like women's education, changes to dress codes, even challenging the veil, the burqa. He wanted to rapidly transform Afghanistan into a modern nation-state.
How did that go down?
Not well with everyone. His reforms deeply alienated powerful tribal and religious leaders. It sparked the Afghan Civil War of 1928-1929, and ultimately, he was forced to abdicate and flee.
So a backlash against rapid change.
A significant one. His successors, Nadir Shah and then his son Zahir Shah, who reigned for a very long time, took a much more gradual approach to modernization. Infrastructure projects, slow institutional development.
And there's that surprising connection with Nazi Germany.
Yes, during the 1930s and early 40s, Afghanistan, trying to balance influences and maintain independence, cultivated ties with Germany and other Axis powers. It's a complex part of their diplomatic history, seeking partners outside the British-Soviet sphere.
Okay, fast forward a bit. The latter half of the 20th century is dominated by conflict. It really starts with the Saur Revolution in 1978, right?
Yes. The Communist People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, the PDPA, violently overthrows the republic, led by Dode Khan, Zahir Shah's cousin. This seizure of power and their subsequent radical reforms triggers widespread rebellion across the country.
Which leads to the Soviet invasion.
In December 1979, the Soviets invade to prop up the struggling communist regime. This turns the internal conflict into a massive, brutal proxy war. The U.S., Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, China, they all start funneling weapons and money to the Afghan resistance fighters, the Mujahideen.
And the human cost was just staggering.
Immense. Estimates range wildly, but somewhere between 500,000 and maybe 2 million Afghans were killed. Society became heavily militarized, power shifted to regional warlords, and millions fled. About 6 million refugees went to Pakistan and Iran. It was devastating.
So the Soviets finally withdraw in 1989. Does peace break out?
Unfortunately, no. The communist government hangs on for a few years, but once it collapses in 1992, the different Mujahideen factions, the victors of the war against the Soviets, immediately turn on each other.
It's a civil war again.
A vicious one. Kabul, in particular, was ravaged by infighting between different groups. There was anarchy, widespread atrocities, just a complete breakdown of order.
And it's out of this chaos that the Taliban emerged.
Exactly. They appear around 1994, mainly originating from religious schools, madrasas in Pakistan, composed largely of ethnic Pashtuns. They had significant military backing from Pakistan's intelligence services.
And they promised to restore order.
Yes, and end the corruption and infighting of the warlords. They gained support initially for that reason. They captured Kandahar, then Herat, and finally took Kabul in 1996, establishing their Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan.
But the order they imposed was incredibly harsh.
Extremely strict, based on their very severe interpretation of Islamic law. Women were essentially forced into virtual house arrest, banned from education and work. Music, television were banned, there were public executions, and brutal, systematic massacres of ethnic minorities, particularly Hazaras.
But there was resistance, right? The Northern Alliance.
Yes, led primarily by Ahmad Shah Massoud, a Tajik commander, and Abdul Rashid Dostum, an Uzbek leader. They held out in the north. Massoud, interestingly, was also trying to build more democratic structures in the areas he controlled, even drafting a women's rights charter.
But he was assassinated.
Tragically, yes. Assassinated by al-Qaeda operatives posing as journalists on September 9th, 2001. Just 2 days before the 9/11 attacks in the U.S.
Which, of course, changes everything. The U.S. invasion follows quickly in October 2001.
Yes, targeting al-Qaeda and the Taliban regime that harbored them. The Taliban were quickly overthrown. This led to the Bonn Agreement and the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan with a new constitution adopted in 2004.
And then began this huge international effort to rebuild the country.
Massive effort. Billions poured in for the economy, healthcare, education, especially for girls, who had been banned under the Taliban infrastructure, agriculture. NATO led a mission, ISAF, to provide security and train the new Afghan National Army and police.
We even saw a democratic transfer of power in 2014, with Ashraf Ghani becoming president.
Yes, though the elections were often contentious. But progress was made in many areas. However, the Taliban insurgency continued throughout this period, and the war remained incredibly violent. Civilian casualties were tragically high. Estimates suggest over 100,000, maybe up to 170,000, killed by all sides during the 2001-2021 conflict.
And then came 2021, the withdrawal of U.S. and allied forces.
And the speed of the Taliban takeover was shocking to many. They swept across the country in a matter of weeks, capturing provincial capitals and finally Kabul in August 2021 as the Afghan government and army collapsed. The Islamic Emirate was reestablished.
And internationally, their government isn't widely recognized.
No. As of mid-2025, Russia is the only country reported to have formally recognized them. There are major ongoing concerns about human rights, especially the severe restrictions placed back on women and girls, banning secondary and university education for them, restricting employment.
The International Criminal Court is involved, too.
Yes, the ICC has issued warrants for Taliban leaders relating to alleged crimes against humanity, specifically targeting women and girls. It's a very serious situation.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit from the conflicts in politics. Talk about the land itself, the geography. It's dominated by mountains, right?
Absolutely. The Hindu Kush Range runs right through the country. It's often called the roof of the world for good reason.
Yeah.
Very rugged, dramatic landscapes, but also fertile plains and river basins.
And the climate.
Continental means harsh, cold winters, especially in the mountains, and very hot, dry summers. And here's a key thing. Afghanistan has quite a few rivers, but paradoxically, about 2/3 of that river water flows out into neighboring countries. So large areas remain very arid.
Which makes it vulnerable to climate change, I imagine.
Extremely vulnerable. Sources point to increased frequency and severity of droughts, desertification is spreading, glaciers in the mountains are melting faster. It's a huge threat. Some projections estimate millions could be displaced by climate impacts by 2050.
Wow. What about the people? The demographics.
The population's estimated somewhere between, say, 35 and 42 million currently. It's still growing quite fast, high fertility rates. It's largely rural, though cities like Kabul have grown enormously. And there's a significant nomadic population, too, the Kochis.
And tragically, it was the world's largest source of refugees for decades.
For 32 years, yes, an incredibly long time, reflecting the decades of conflict.
Languages. Dari and Pashto are the main ones.
Yes, both are official. Dari, which is a dialect of Persian, often functions as the lingua franca, the common language, especially in cities in the north and west. Pashto is spoken mainly by Pashtuns in the south and east. Bilingualism is very common.
And religion is overwhelmingly Muslim.
Over 99%, yes. Mostly Sunni Muslims following the Hanafi school, but there's also a significant Shia minority, mainly Hazaras. Historically, there were Sikh, Hindu, and even a small Jewish community, but most have emigrated due to conflict and persecution.
Culturally, what are some key aspects?
Things like tribal solidarity, concepts of honor, Pashtunwali for Pashtuns, hospitality, these are deeply ingrained. Traditional housing often features mud brick compounds. Clothing like the shalwar kameez is widespread for both men and women.
And the burqa.
The full covering, the burqa or chador, its prevalence has varied, but it became mandatory under the first Taliban rule, and its use is again strongly encouraged or enforced now. You also see distinctive hats like the karakul lambskin hat or the flat-topped wool pakol, famously worn by Masood.
Let's talk economy. You mentioned it's one of the least developed countries.
It is, despite having potentially vast, untapped mineral wealth. We're talking estimates of over $1 trillion worth of stuff like copper, iron ore, lithium, which is crucial for batteries, rare earth elements, natural gas, gold.
And lapis lazuli, of course.
The famous deep blue stone. Yeah, mined there for millennia. Key exports today are things like carpets, Afghan rugs are world-renowned, and agricultural products like fruits and nuts.
Is there any positive economic news?
Well, there are some complex signs. Returning expatriates have brought some investment. Construction is ongoing. The Taliban did sign mining contracts reportedly worth $6.5 billion in 2023, though realizing that potential is another matter. Energy is still a big challenge. They rely heavily on hydropower, but import a lot of electricity.
You mentioned the Ring Road project earlier.
Yes, a major infrastructure project aiming to connect the main cities like Kabul, Kandahar, Herat, Mazar-e-Sharif in a loop. Parts are complete, but security and funding have always been issues.
And that surprising currency stabilization in 2023.
Right. The Afghani became the world's best-performing currency for a quarter. Sources suggest it was a combination of factors. UN cash injection for humanitarian aid, the Taliban cracking down hard on illegal dollar outflows and corruption, maybe controlling the illicit opium trade revenues more tightly. A very unexpected outcome amidst a humanitarian crisis caused by frozen assets and suspended aid.
What about cultural heritage beyond, say, daily life, architecture, arts?
Afghanistan has an incredible architectural legacy. You see remnants of Greek temples, Buddhist stupas, and monasteries like at Maze Aynak, which is also a huge copper deposit site.
The difficult combination.
Very. And then magnificent Islamic architecture, the Great Mosque of Herat, the incredibly preserved Minaret of Jam out in a remote valley, but also tragic losses, most famously the Taliban's destruction of the giant Buddhas of Bamiyan in 2001.
Such a loss. And other arts?
Carpet weaving, as mentioned, is huge. Pottery. There's the unique Gandhara art style, that blend of Buddhist themes with Greco-Roman aesthetics from the Kushan era. Literature, especially poetry, is deeply cherished in both Dari and Pashto. Music has a rich tradition, though it faced bans under the Taliban. The Atan is the national dance, a very vibrant group dance.
Any traditional holidays unique to the region?
Nowruz, the Persian New Year celebrated around the spring equinox, has ancient Zoroastrian roots and is a huge celebration. Yalda Night, marking the winter solstice, is another ancient tradition. And of course, Islamic holidays are central.
Is there still media? Radio? TV?
Media saw explosive growth after 2001, hundreds of radio stations, TV channels, newspapers. It's become much more restricted again since 2021, but some independent outlets continue, often from exile.
And tourism, you mentioned that surprisingly increased.
It has, somewhat counterintuitively. Small numbers of adventurous tourists are visiting, drawn by the landscapes like the Bamiyan Valley or the remote walk-on corridor. But obviously, security is a major concern, with threats from groups like ISIS-K, the Islamic State affiliate, still present.
Which brings us back to the human rights situation, which we have to underscore.
We really do. Beyond the devastating impact on women's and girls' rights to education and work, sources highlight ongoing concerns about the treatment of ethnic and religious minorities, lack of freedom of speech and press, and the persistence of harsh traditional practices, plus the criminalization of homosexuality. The international community, including the UN and bodies like the ICC, remain deeply concerned and are closely monitoring the situation.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway? Afghanistan's history is just so layered.
It really is. It's this story of constant intersection, constant struggle, but also incredible resilience. It's been a prize for empires, a center of culture, a place of deep faith, and now faces immense challenges. It's far more than just a battlefield.
It's a nation with this incredibly deep history and a people who have endured so much, constantly striving.
Yeah. And thinking about that history, the roundabout of the ancient world, the crossroads, and then thinking about those untapped resources, that potential wealth, it leaves you with a really profound question, doesn't it?
Which is?
What could Afghanistan's future be if somehow, someday, these internal divisions and external pressures could be navigated towards real, lasting stability, towards genuine human flourishing for all its people?
A powerful question indeed. Something for all of us to keep pondering. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Keep exploring.